Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the book of Galatians, and we're in chapter 1, verse 11. The last time we were together, Paul immediately followed his hello with, "What is wrong with you people?" Um, so in verse 11, he's going to he's going to tell his story and at length tell his story for multiple purposes. Paul tells his story to everybody. He tells this story multiple times in the book of Acts, to the Galatians, to the Corinthians, to the Philippians, to Timothy. He continues to rehearse his own story because he himself is the perfect illustration of the point he's trying to make, his past, his redemption. So there's that. But there's also this. He's establishing his own authority as an apostle. These are early days. They may not even have had the meeting in Acts 15 yet, and he's not one of the 11. He's not even Matthias, um, and so he is reestablishing for them his own credibility as an apostle, someone who is an apostle in exactly the same way as Peter is an apostle, which doesn't mean he's puffing himself up in any way. Because he says in 1 Corinthians 15, I'm the least of the apostles. I don't have the right to be called an apostle, but Jesus called me. It wasn't my choice. He's the one who called me. Um, so he begins to tell his story, and he gives us so much more detail in the next two chapters than we have in the book of Acts. We have his call on the Damascus Road in Acts 9. We have him escaping from Damascus after immediately preaching. We have him going to Jerusalem and being introduced around by Barnabas. That doesn't go swimmingly, but it's not a crash and burn. And then he's back home in Tarsus in Acts 11 when Barnabas goes to fetch him to help him with the work in Antioch. And so we know that from the book of Acts, but he's going to flesh out the story, and he begins to do that here. Verse 11, I would have you know, brethren, that the gospel was preached by me is not according to man. I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through the revelation of Jesus Christ. And he means this directly. No one sat me down at a table and studied with me. I didn't attend a sermon where someone reached me with the gospel message. Jesus himself has taught me. We have to give our kudos to Ananias, who went and said, why do you wait? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, whenever it was a frightening thing to do. So a man did give him the gospel call. A man did baptize him. But Jesus called him on the Damascus Road, and Jesus is the one who's going to train him up directly. For you have heard of my former manner of life in Judaism, how I used to persecute the church of God beyond measure and tried to eradicate it. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond my contemporaries, among my countrymen, being more extremely zealous for my ancestral traditions. But when he who set me apart, even from my mother's womb, and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away to Arabia, and returned once more to Damascus. Then, after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem. Okay, he spent 3 years in the Arabian desert. So what we learn from this is that after his escape from Damascus, Paul goes to Damascus, he's baptized after the Damascus Road experience. He immediately begins preaching the gospel in Damascus, and the Jews try to kill him because they recognize that their greatest weapon against Christians is now himself a Christian. And he has to escape through a window in the wall. He's let down in a basket over the wall from Damascus in the night. And he tells us here that between this and Barnabas introducing him around at Jerusalem, he spends 3 years in the Arabian desert being trained by Jesus directly and personally. Why is 3 years significant? Because that is the length of Jesus' own public ministry. That means that Paul got the same amount of time with Jesus that Peter, Andrew, James, John, and the rest of the apostles got. But in a sense, his time was even more intense. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I don't want to say better. But he had Jesus to himself without distraction. Now, one could argue seeing the distractions and how Jesus handled them, being in the midst of the people and seeing Jesus deal with people is itself an advantage. And that's true. But he had something unique that the other apostles did not have, that they would have given life and limb for, and that is one-on-one time with Jesus, uninterrupted and undisturbed. And Paul had that for 3 years. Notice that he also said, he set me apart from my mother's womb. He understands that from the time he was born, everything that went into his makeup, his Judaism, his being raised a Roman citizen, his training in the law, his secular training in the Greek authors, his vocational training as a tent maker, all of it was God preparing him the way God prepared Moses in the halls of power in Pharaoh's court, in the wilderness of Sinai, as he took care of sheep. God is preparing him for the moment when he will be ready to serve. And when that moment comes, he calls him. And so he shares that with us and with the Galatians. And he said, this is not something I just made up. He is telling them, God has prepared me to share this message from the time I was born. And when the moment was right, he called me. And now I'm sharing it to you. I'm not just some yahoo that came your way. I'm somebody who was sent for you, sent to you at the right time. I'm the right man at the right time to share the gospel with you. And I did. So why are you throwing it all away? Okay, he's going to continue his story in verse 18. We'll pick up there next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.